You think blockchain is just about Bitcoin? Think again. From securing our food supply to revolutionizing media and building quantum-resistant infrastructures, blockchain is at the forefront of real-world innovation. In this video, we'll explore 5 groundbreaking applications that are reshaping industries and creating new investment opportunities. Stay tuned to discover how blockchain is changing the world as we know it. Alright, so this is the first out of the 5 articles I'd like to go through today with you. The first one is to do with this China blockchain playbook. Now, we all know from the news we are in this US-China tariff war at the moment, even though that the recent news that they've reached a kind of a 90-day truce. And also the US have actually reduced its over 150% down to 30%, which is the current tariff that they've decided to impose on China. So it's a huge reduction. And on top of that, they said, well, let's come to a truce over 90 days so we can each reflect on what should be the trade solution moving forward. In parallel to those discussions, this article makes sense in that China wants to capitalize this 90-day truce to do something about their positioning in the world in terms of influence, not just limiting itself as economic power, but also from a technological standpoint, which is what this article aims to explain. So it mentions the problem that they have is China, as part of this trade war with the US, is trying to reduce its reliance and dependence on Western financial systems like the SWIFT, and establish a sovereign digital infrastructure to enhance its global influence. Now, what they're proposing here in this article, well, the Chinese government, the Communist China People's Party, is investing heavily in blockchain technology to create a centralized digital currency and infrastructure, promoting transparency and efficiency in transactions. So clearly that is the solution, but what are the benefits this is going to bring to potential investors? Early investments in China's blockchain initiatives could yield significant returns as the country positions itself as a leader in digital finance, potentially influencing global standards. Now, this makes sense, but I'm kind of doubtful about investing anything that is China labeled. Why? Because we all know that they are a communist regime, and from an investment standpoint, it's indispensable to have that open financial markets, open society, and a democratic, which clearly China isn't, being a communist regime. So I'm kind of doubtful about this proposition of theirs. But having said this, given that we are now in a multipolarized world where the US and China are battling each other to death in terms of reigning supreme economically as a technological power, it might be an opportunity for China to perhaps rethink on how to best attract investors, particularly foreign investors in the country, and particularly on this blockchain initiative of theirs. Because blockchain, as a reminder, particularly if we're talking about rolling out a public blockchain, well, there is no cheating on this system. It goes against anything that is communist. I mean, it's anti-communist in the sense that it's fully open and transparent. The transactions that are committed on a public blockchain is completely open to everyone to see and verify for themselves. My question and doubt there is, will the Chinese political class would accept this moving forward? Even though this is a wonderful news headlines that they're going to start to look into blockchain, there is still that doubt, in my mind at least, that this would have to shift their political and society being closed to becoming open, transparent, and even democratic, in order for this investment they can think of making is going to be palatable. So I'd be very wary about this, but nevertheless, this is a good opportunity for China to start rethinking. Now, moving on to this other article, which talks about blockchain is revolutionizing cybersecurity. These are the applications from an investment standpoint you ought to know about. Now, this talks about the traditional cybersecurity measures are increasingly vulnerable to sophisticated attacks. And we've seen plenty of news. Every company, every government, every corporation, they're all susceptible to highly sophisticated cybersecurity attacks. So we're completely vulnerable which leads to data breaches and even loss of trust. So what's the solution to resolve that predicament? Well, blockchain technology offers decentralized and immutable data storage, thereby enhancing security protocols and even reducing the risk of unauthorized access. From an investment standpoint, the benefits this could bring is investing in blockchain-based cybersecurity firms presents an opportunity to capitalize on the growing demand for robust digital security solutions across industries in order to make all the companies, even the governments, dependency on these cybersecurity enabled blockchains that they're trying to roll out and revolutionize. It's going to give increased security and avert these highly sophisticated attacks in the future. So this is actually very important because we all know that cybersecurity is the biggest threat that we have across the world because it's linked with every other downstream risk, whether it's geopolitical risk, societal risk, economic risk. If the cybersecurity is not up to standard, well, we're all at the mercy of doom and gloom. So I think this is an important area that blockchain can help alleviate that cybersecurity threat moving forward. So this is something that I would encourage you to watch this space and do your own research. But this is certainly full of optimism and hope. So more to come on that. The next one on is the one that we've probably heard an awful lot around the threat of quantum computing on the blockchain and Bitcoin, all the rest of it. So this article, it titles here, Agile Dynamics to Architect Quantum Resistant Blockchain Infrastructure for Abu Dhabi region. So clearly the advent of quantum computing certainly poses a threat to current encryption methods, potentially compromising data security and capital investments. So the solution that they're proposing here is Agile Dynamics is a company is developing a quantum resistant blockchain infrastructure for Abu Dhabi, ensuring long-term data protection and integrity. So clearly, what are the benefits for investors here? Well, backing quantum resistant blockchain projects positions investors at the forefront of next generation cybersecurity with applications across finance, healthcare, and even government sectors. We've also heard that Bitcoin was a few months ago under the news where Google actually developed a chip that made claims that they may actually threaten the security of the Bitcoin network, which what happened there is this actually came to no avail because the amount of computational power denominated as qubits is actually inferior to the millions of qubits that the Bitcoin network currently has. So it completely dwarfs that threat from the Google chip to break the Bitcoin security network. But having said that, the core Bitcoin developers are always at the forefront to develop quantum resistant methods and solutions to strengthen the Bitcoin security network. So I know this is something that the Bitcoin core developers are working on actively. And this, in addition to what Agile Dynamics is proposing here, well, clearly there is a tremendous opportunity, investment opportunity to strengthen particularly public blockchain networks to be completely resistant to quantum computing threats. So this is very pioneering from Agile Dynamics. So this, together with what the core Bitcoin developers are doing to make the Bitcoin network even more quantum resistant in the foreseeable future, is something that should give us tremendous amount of enthusiasm, hope, and optimism. So again, as with the other articles, there's going to be more to come on that space. The fourth one is to do with revolutionary blockchain technology offers producers an opportunity to deepen consumer trust. So clearly, the problem statement here is consumers are increasingly demanding greater transparency in the food supply chain, particularly concerning the origin and handling of seafood products, which is the case here in this article. But the same can be said about all categories of food across the supply chain. So that is a problem statement. What is the solution? Well, clearly implementing blockchain technology again enables end-to-end traceability of seafood or food in general, providing verifiable information on sourcing, processing, and distribution. So the benefits for investors in this case is investing in blockchain solutions for supply chain transparency can lead to increased consumer trust and brand loyalty, driving up growth in the food industry. So this is clearly one of the many use cases that blockchain provides is open transparency, auditability in terms of the transactions that get committed onto these public blockchains. So the entire value chain, whether it's supply chain, producers, customers or employees working for these companies, they all have the opportunity to verify for themselves and even increase their level of trust on these supply chain producers through this public blockchain technology. So again, this is highly promising. And as you're beginning to see, there are many, many more use cases with huge potential that can benefit the attributes that the blockchain technology provides. So more to come on this space. And lastly, the last use case that I've come across, it talks about the promise in media buying, loyalty, and the future of advertising. So clearly, the problem statement is rather obvious. The advertising industry faces challenges with data transparency, fraud, and ineffective loyalty programs. So clearly, the solution here is blockchain technology introduces, yet again, transparency and secure systems for media buying and loyalty programs, ensuring accurate data tracking and rewarding genuine consumer engagement. The benefits here are tremendous in that supporting blockchain innovations in advertising can disrupt traditional models, offering scalable solutions with improved ROI, return on investment for brands and advertisers. So you're beginning to see that with the 5 use cases that I've shown you here, that the opportunities, the investment opportunities to be had in blockchain technology as a whole is completely massive and skyrocket to the moon, because this is just a drop in the ocean on the prospect that it can provide. The blockchain technology is certainly that truth network, that open, transparent network where everyone, all participants can join and trade in those blockchains in order to carry out these very rather interesting use cases for the benefits of the companies in terms of making money and increasing the level of trust to their ecosystems or value chains, but importantly to society at large. Because if we all can join into a public blockchain, well, clearly everyone would benefit from it. There is no cheating of it. No one can tamper or unravel or even undo the transactions once they get committed onto these public blockchains, which is for me the fundamental advantages that any public blockchain provides over a corporation-owned database, which is susceptible to fraud, to manipulation. In order to wrap up today's episode, I want to show you a few interesting charts, which I think is very important. This one here is rather useful resource. It's called RWA.XYZ because it gives you a real life data in terms of the current monetary value, market capitalization value of RWA on the chain. So very, very interesting. It shows clearly there are 3 major sectors that comprise the majority of the RWA on-chain market cap. The first one is to do with private credit, followed by US Treasury and commodities. These are the 3 major segments or sectors that are occupying almost $23 billion of RWA on-chain market capitalization. And you've got the number of asset holders here and the total amount of asset issuers. So these are the individual RWA, real world assets, coin projects or issuers of these RWA tokens on chain. And it just gives you the perspective clearly that this is growing. You can see if you go back into 2021, it started out virtually penniless. If we move on to current present day, well, you have, as shown you here, $22.5 billion worth. And you can see the breakup here is actually even more granular. We're talking about private credit, as I said, occupies the top place, followed by US Treasury bills, debt, commodities, and you have even stocks that are becoming tokenized on the blockchain. And you've got corporate bonds and all the rest of it. So you can clearly see that this list of use cases or sectors is going to increase over time because we are seeing increasing demand and appetite to invest in RWAs. And it's not just me saying it. If you look into these 2 other articles, you've got a couple of estimates from renowned consultancy firms, strategy firms like Boston Consulting Group. They say that the RWA sector could indeed reach $600 billion in the next 5 years. And there's another one here from McKinsey, where they've been even more bullish, in that McKinsey & Company forecast a $2 trillion market cap for tokenized real world assets. It says that $2 trillion market cap for tokenized real world assets by 2030. It indicates that the conservative market cap could indeed double to 4 trillion in a bullish scenario. So the 2 trillion is the conservative estimate, and the bullish scenario is double that, 4 trillion. But it goes on to say that Boston Consulting Group and 21 Shares predicted an even larger market cap of a whopping 16 trillion US dollars and 10 trillion dollars respectively. So clearly, if you sum up the use case that I've shown you today, the current present day value of the RWA market I've shown you previously, and these two estimates from these two renowned consultancy firms, strategy firms, we can confidently say that this is very bullish. The perspective on RWAs and blockchain technology, where they want to tokenize absolutely everything that we are familiar with in the brick and mortar world, in the physical analog world, anything that has an economic value attached, that in itself is a perfect candidate to be tokenized onto the blockchain. And it's not just me saying it. You've got these two major strategy firms giving these rather bullish estimates by 2030. I think everyone is trying to make predictions by 2030 because that's the next decade from now. It's only 5 years away, mind you. So it's just around the corner where we're going to see this truly explosive potential of real world assets tokenization and blockchain at large. And I want to end this episode on the final calculator that I've seen, which I find it fascinating. It's the World Inflation Calculator. Now, I've made a simple simulation here where I've actually specified an amount, let's say $1 million, and I hit calculate. This is based on the CPI, the consumer price indices provided by these governments or the authorities. So in the case of $1 million, let's go back to 100,000 to be fair, so much more manageable. So let's say I plugged in 100,000 US dollars to see what's the rate of inflation or the rate of debasement of their currencies from March 2003 to March 2025 this year between the two countries, between the US and the United Kingdom. So you can see the actual inflation rates, the currency debasement is quite similar, which is at all no surprise given the historical linkages between these two nations. You can see in the case of the US, what it's trying to say here is for the same $100,000 purchasing power in March 2003, it would equate to 173,615 US dollars on March 2025. So 22 years later, it's going to cost you more. So the purchasing power has eroded by almost 74%. And similarly in the case of the UK, is quite similar. So 100,000 purchasing power in March 2003 would equate to 178,141 in March 2025. So it's a slightly higher rate of inflation, 78%. So what I'm trying to say here is there's no good keeping all of our wealth held in cash deposited accounts. We need to make an intelligent decision on what and how to spend on that eroded capital that we have in our cash deposit accounts and put it to work and to good use. So particularly for the boomers out there, I've made a couple of videos where I explain that the expectations in terms of transferring your wealth that you built during your lifetime to your heirs, particularly if they're Gen Zs, and they're not going to be at all interested in 20th century style analog assets, whether it's real estate properties, yachts, arts and collectibles, even stocks, because they're all going to be demonetized against Bitcoin particularly and digital assets at large. So this episode hopefully is giving you that eye-opener that you ought to start perhaps converting your 20th century physical analog assets to a digital assets realm, because this is where the Gen Zs particularly and the future generations after them, because they're going to be expected to accumulate their wealth on digital assets and Bitcoin, not the 20th century style analogs that you may be used to. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully it's given you that in-depth use cases in blockchain and real assets large is going to grow significantly over time. There is certainly going to be this bullish potential for even more growth as more physical analog assets get converted and tokenized into the blockchain. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like button, to share the video to friends and colleagues at work. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, as I regularly publish some interesting videos such as these, anything to do with Bitcoin, blockchain technology, and the future of finance. So until next time.